I stared at the polished oak door of Harborview Bistro, my bistro, willing it to swing open. The brass handle gleamed in the 8 a.m. light, a bright, mocking eye. It had been 20 minutes since our grand opening, 20 minutes of absolute deafening silence. My phone vibrated against the cool marble countertop. Another notification. I swiped the screen open, my thumb clumsy. A flood of congratulatory messages from former classmates, old neighbors, even my high school chemistry teacher. So proud of you, Clara. Can't wait to visit. Following your dreams. The words blurred. None from Laura, none from Robert, nothing from Sophie or Ethan. A knot tightened in my throat. I opened our family group chat. The most recent message sat there like a boulder on my chest. It was a photo from last night. Laura and Robert flanking Ethan at some glittering corporate awards ceremony. His perfect white smile beamed beneath a banner. Excellence in financial innovation. Laura's caption, "So proud of our son tonight." My stomach dropped. That familiar sickening lurch of missing a step on a dark staircase. I blinked hard, fighting the sting behind my eyes as the reality settled in. They had chosen Ethan again. On the most important day of my life, they were at a banquet celebrating him. I set the phone face down, my hands trembling. The bistro, my bistro, stood ready. The gleaming espresso machine I'd bought used and polished for a week. The display cases filled with pastries I'd spent days perfecting. Lavender shortbread, rosemary sea salt scones, lemon thyme tarts. The hand-painted signs I'd stayed up until 3 a.m. finishing. The cushioned window seats I'd sewn myself, everything I'd dreamed of since I was a little girl, drawing pictures of Clara's cafe with rainbow crayons. And I was standing here, completely, utterly alone. I'd pictured this moment so differently. I'd pictured a place where everyone felt at home, where the aroma of fresh bread and coffee wrapped around you like a warm blanket. I pictured my parents sitting at the best table, telling everyone who'd listen, "Our daughter. She built all of this." The memory of the last 4 years flooded back. Endless double shifts, waitressing mornings at the diner, smelling of burnt toast and old coffee, bartending nights at the hotel lounge, my feet aching so badly I'd limp to my car. 4 years of sore feet and aching backs, watching my savings account climb, dollar by painstaking dollar, until it finally hit $92,000. All while Ethan attended Wake Forest on our parents' dime. His apartment paid for, his future secured, his innovations celebrated. "It's cute that you're interested in cooking, honey," Laura had said when I'd tentatively mentioned culinary school years ago. "But it's not exactly practical, is it? Not like Ethan's business degree. Not like Sophie's marketing career." I ran my fingertips along the exposed brick wall. The wall I had stripped, wire-brushed, and refinished myself after finding this perfect, neglected storefront in downtown Providence. 3 months of brutal renovation. Painting until midnight, installing fixtures before dawn, learning basic plumbing from YouTube videos while my family called, asking when I was going to get serious about my future. For the past week, I had risen at 4 a.m. to bake, working until 9 p.m. to ensure everything would be perfect today. Perfect for the family that didn't show up. "Maybe if this succeeds, they'll finally see me," I whispered to the empty room. The words hung in the air, pathetic and familiar. How many times had I chased their approval? How many times had I shrunk myself to fit their expectations? The art school acceptance letter. The one I'd hidden in a drawer, then declined, because Robert said artists starve, and Laura worried what the relatives would think. The first of so many dreams sacrificed on the altar of their validation. Years of swallowing my words when Ethan interrupted me at dinner. Years of accepting Sophie's backhanded compliments about my quirky ideas. Years of making myself smaller to avoid being labeled difficult or dramatic. Years of waiting for an atta-girl that never came. My phone buzzed again. Robert's name. My heart leaped, a stupid, hopeful jump before I read the message. "We need to talk about your cafe situation." My fingers hovered over the keyboard. The old Clara would have apologized. "I'm sorry. Is something wrong?" The old Clara would have asked what she'd done wrong, would have begged for guidance. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the sight of my new logo, Harborview Bistro, painted in elegant gold leaf on the window. Maybe it was the memory of signing the business license, my hand shaking but my signature firm. Whatever it was, I typed back, "The cafe is doing fine, thanks." 3 dots appeared as Sophie started typing. A moment later, a single perfect heart emoji, her trademark passive-aggressive response, the digital pat on the head. It meant, "I disapprove, but I'm too nice to say so." I closed the chat and slid the phone into my apron pocket. A sharp knock on the window glass made me jump. I looked up. An older woman was peering in, shielding her eyes. Behind her, a man in a business suit was checking his watch. Behind him, 2 college students were talking animatedly. A line had formed outside, real customers, waiting for my bistro to open. I took a deep breath, smoothing my apron. I plastered on a smile, hoping it looked real, and walked to the door. I turned the deadbolt. "Welcome to Harborview," I said, holding the door wide. They streamed in, a wave of warmth and noise and life. "Oh my goodness, look at these pastries! The atmosphere in here is perfect. Did you make all these yourself?" The praise washed over me, a balm on the raw wound of my family's absence. I moved to the espresso machine, my hands finding their rhythm. "What can I get for you?" "Everything okay, boss?" I looked up. Rebecca, my new barista, was watching me, her brow furrowed. It was a brief lull in the rush. She'd caught me staring at my phone again, checking for messages that still weren't there. I tucked the phone away and straightened my shoulders. "Just family stuff." I nodded toward the bustling cafe. Customers were chatting at tables, lounge chairs were filled, the window seats were occupied, exactly as I'd imagined. "This," I said, the words feeling truer as I spoke them, "this is what matters now." The ache of their invisibility still lingered beneath my ribs, a dull, chronic pain. But maybe this bistro wasn't just about proving something to them. Maybe it was about proving something to myself. A young woman approached the counter, holding up one of my lavender shortbread cookies. "This is, without a doubt, the best thing I have eaten in months," she said, her eyes wide with genuine delight. "I will definitely be back tomorrow." I smiled at her, a real smile this time. "I'll be here, I promise." If you're watching this video, tell me where you're from or what time it is for you. 3 weeks later, the bistro was holding its own. More than holding its own. We had regulars. We had sold out mornings. We were exhausted, exhilarated, and just barely breaking even. Then the summons came. A text from Laura. "Family dinner, Sunday. Your father and I want to celebrate your success." My stomach tightened. I wasn't fooled by the word celebrate. The last 3 weeks had been filled with a cold, polite silence from them. This was not a celebration. This was a meeting. "How's the family ambush going to go?" Rebecca asked as I untied my apron on Sunday afternoon. "Predictably," I said. "Robert will be stern, Laura will be worried, Sophie will be condescending, and Ethan will be Ethan. Kick him in the shins," she said, not smiling. "Figuratively or literally, I'll post bail." I stepped through the front door of my childhood home, the familiar scent of Laura's potpourri hitting me like a wave. "There she is!" Ethan's voice boomed from the living room. He was lounging in Robert's leather armchair, one ankle crossed over his knee, a designer watch glinting as he raised a glass of whiskey in a mock salute. "How's life in the cupcake world, Clara?" I forced a smile, ignoring the diminutive description. "The bistro is doing well, actually. We had lines out the door all weekend." "That's nice, honey." Laura emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Your father wants to talk to you in his study before dinner." Of course he did. The study. The mahogany-paneled room where serious family business happened, where Ethan received praise for his Wake Forest acceptance, where Sophie announced her promotion to marketing director, where I had only ever received concern and correction. Robert was sitting behind his massive desk, reading glasses perched on his nose. A Forbes magazine lay on his blotter. He slid it toward me without looking up. 80% of cafes fail within 3 years. I read the highlighted headline aloud, my voice flat. "Robert," Laura said softly from the doorway, "let's at least let her eat something first." "This can't wait, Laura." He removed his glasses, fixing me with the same stern gaze that had once made me confess to borrowing his car at 16. "Your mother and I have been discussing your situation." "My situation?" Heat crept up my neck. "You mean my business? The one that's been open for 3 weeks and is already exceeding its projections." "Projections you made?" Sophie chimed in. She was leaning against the doorframe beside Laura, all sleek blonde hair and unflinching certainty. "Without any real business experience?" I turned to face my sister. "I did market research. I took business classes at the community college." "Community college?" Ethan snorted, appearing behind Sophie with a fresh drink. "That's adorable, Clara, really." "You're creative, honey," Laura said, her tone softer but no less patronizing. "That's a wonderful gift, but you're not practical. You never have been." "You have invested your entire life savings into this venture," Robert continued, tapping the Forbes article, "without consulting anyone who actually understands business." "I consulted plenty of people," I protested, my voice rising. "Professional bakers, other cafe owners in Providence." "Dreamers," Robert dismissed with a wave of his hand. "Not financial advisors, not business strategists, which is why we have a proposal." Ethan stepped forward, setting his glass down on the desk. He was in his element now, the boardroom predator. "I'll oversee the financials. I have experience turning around failing businesses." "Failing?" My voice cracked. "Harborview isn't failing." "Not yet," Sophie muttered, examining her manicure. "As a consultant, I normally charge a significant fee for this service," Ethan continued, as if I hadn't spoken. "But as family, I'm offering to help, pro bono." "How generous," I said. He smiled, missing the sarcasm. "All you need to do is add me to your business accounts. Full access. That way I can monitor your cash flow, optimize your spending, and make the necessary adjustments to ensure profitability." The room seemed to shrink. "You want access to my business accounts?" The very thought made my hands go cold. Those 4 years of double shifts. Of crying in the shower because my feet were so sore. Of counting every single penny. And they wanted me to just hand over the keys to Ethan. "It's for your own good, Clara," Laura said, reaching for my hand. I pulled it away. "We're just trying to help," Robert said, his tone hardening, "before you lose everything." The unspoken threat hung in the air. Cooperate or face our disappointment. Cooperate or you're on your own. The invisible strings they'd always attached to their love were tightening around my throat. "When this collapses," Robert continued, leaning back in his chair, "don't say we didn't try to warn you." When, not if. The certainty in his voice should have crushed me. Instead, something inside my chest shifted, a quiet, cold click, like a lock turning. I'd seen this scene before, their concern masquerading as support, all while positioning Ethan as the savior. I'd played my part so many times, nodding gratefully as they explained why my dreams needed their guidance, their control. But looking at them now, Robert's stern disapproval, Laura's worried resignation, Sophie's smug superiority, and Ethan's confident, predatory smile, I realized the truth. They had never, not once, actually believed in me. Their help had always been about control. It had never been about support. I didn't need to argue. I didn't need to defend my business plan, or my projections, or the growing list of regular customers who return day after day. Words wouldn't change their minds. Only proof would. "Thank you for your concern," I said finally. My voice was steadier than I expected. "I'll think about it." The surprise on their faces was almost comical. They had expected tears or anger or immediate, grateful capitulation. They hadn't expected this calm consideration. "That's all we ask, honey," Laura said quickly, relief softening her features. "Now dinner's getting cold." As we moved to the dining room, my phone vibrated in my pocket. A text from Rebecca. "How's the family ambush going? Need an emergency call to escape?" A small smile tugged at my lips. I typed back, "Not yet. Thanks for checking." Another message popped up. It was from Tessa, the florist whose shop was 2 doors down. "Customer loved. Your croissants with my arrangements. Thinking we could do a Mother's Day special together?" Behind her message was one from the barbershop owner across the street suggesting a cross-promotion, haircut discounts with a coffee purchase, and below that an email notification, Providence Chronicle, at N Harborview Bistro, request for interview. I slid my phone back into my pocket as Ethan began regaling the table with a story about his latest consulting triumph. Under the table, my fingers unclenched. I didn't need their validation to succeed. I just needed to prove them wrong. The next few weeks were a blur of frenetic energy. I poured every ounce of myself into the bistro, using my family's dismissal as fuel. The concerned messages continued, a relentless barrage of negativity. A text from Robert with a link. "Local eatery shuts down citing high rent. Just want you to be prepared, Clara." An email from Sophie. "Attached is a franchise brochure for Bean Central. Much more stable income stream than going solo. They're looking to expand in Providence. Want me to grab you a packet?" A text from Ethan. "Interesting article on why independent cafes struggle to compete with chains. Thought it might help you pivot before it's too late." I deleted them all without replying. Instead, I met with Tessa, the florist. We launched a Blooms and Bakes weekend special. I met with the owner of the independent bookstore, and we started a Books and Brews discount. I met with the owner of the craft brewery on the corner, and we arranged for me to sell pastries during their Sunday afternoon public house hours. I was building a community, not just a customer base. I was weaving Harborview into the fabric of the neighborhood, creating partnerships that made us all stronger. "These are selling like crazy," Rebecca said one morning, pointing to the empty tray where the Blooms and Bakes lavender tarts had been. "Tessa's shop sent over at least 10 new customers today." "Good," I said, wiping flour from my hands. "That's the plan. We're a fortress. We support our allies." "Speaking of allies," Rebecca said, her voice dropping. "Company, 10 o'clock. I looked up. Ethan was striding through the door, his tailored suit and expensive briefcase looking comically out of place among the morning crowd of students, artists, and retirees. The cafe hummed with conversation, but his presence sucked the air out of the room. He didn't get in line. He walked straight to the counter, bypassing a woman who was waiting to order. "Busy morning," he said, raising an eyebrow as he assessed the crowd. "The usual," I said coolly, turning to the woman he'd cut off. "Hi, what can I get for you?" "I'll have a large latte," she said, glaring at Ethan's back. I made her drink, my movements quick and efficient. Ethan tapped his fingers on the marble countertop. "I thought I'd stop by," he said, as I handed the woman her latte. "Look at your books while you handle all this." He gestured vaguely at the espresso machine. "Give you some professional insight." The cafe was bustling. 3 college students were debating philosophy in the corner. A writer I recognized was typing furiously on her laptop. An elderly couple was sharing a scone, holding hands across the table. This was my place, my community. "I'm handling my finances just fine, Ethan," I said, my voice steady but low. "Come on, Clara." He lowered his voice, leaning in conspiratorially. "We both know these little hobby businesses need proper oversight. Let me help you before you get in over your head." Hobby business. The words hit their target with pinpoint precision. I set down the metal pitcher I was holding. I looked him directly in the eye. The entire counter area had gone quiet. Even the woman who'd gotten her latte was lingering, watching. "This isn't a hobby, Ethan," I said, my voice clear and carrying. "It's a business. My business." His smile faltered. "And right now," I continued, "I have paying customers to serve. So unless you're planning on ordering something, I need you to get out of the way. I gesturing toward the door. His expression hardened. The charming pro bono consultant vanished, replaced by the brother who'd always seen me as an inconvenience. He recognized the dismissal. He wasn't in charge here. Without another word, he snapped his briefcase shut, turned on his heel, and stalked out. The bell above the door jingled his exit. The entire cafe seemed to exhale. "Everything okay, boss?" Rebecca approached, her face a mask of concern. "Just family being family," I said, straightening my shoulders. I turned back to the next person in line. "Hi, welcome to Harborview. What can I get for you?" As I worked, Rebecca squeezed my arm. "For what it's worth," she whispered, "I'd choose your coffee over any chain in Providence. We all would." She nodded toward the regulars who were watching me with expressions of fierce, protective support. The email from the Providence Chronicle wasn't a fluke. A week after I'd sent my reply, the reporter, Veronica Walsh, walked into the bistro. She was sharp, observant, and didn't waste time. "So," she said, sipping the latte I'd made her, "your name keeps coming up. The bookstore, the florist, even the brewery. They all say you're the one pulling this block together. But the numbers from the city business registry, they're impressive for a startup, especially one competing with the two major chains just blocks away." I found myself relaxing as we talked. I wasn't trying to prove anything to her. I was just telling her the truth. "I don't see them as competition," I explained. "They sell coffee. I'm trying to sell an experience, a third place that isn't your home or your office, somewhere you feel welcome. We know our regulars by name. We know their orders. The chains are efficient. We're a community." "And the partnerships?" she asked, her pen flying across her notepad. "We're stronger together. Why compete with the florist when we can collaborate? Her customers need coffee, my customers need flowers for an event. It's not rocket science. It's just neighborhood." The article came out the following Sunday, on the front page of the Life and Arts section. The headline was huge: "The Bistro that built a neighborhood, how Harborview is outperforming corporate rivals by focusing on community." It was validation, not from my family, but from the city. The bistro exploded. The phone rang off the hook. New customers flooded in, holding the newspaper article. "Are you Clara?" they'd ask. We read the story. We had to hire a part-time baker just to keep up with the demand. I was exhausted, terrified, and happier than I'd ever been. And then the email came. It wasn't from a local shop. The domain was terracore.com. Terracore, the largest, most prestigious tech firm in Providence. Their new glass and steel headquarters had just opened downtown, a monument to a new era. Subject: catering inquiry, executive meetings. "Ms. Clara, we've been hearing significant buzz about Harborview Bistro, and the recent Chronicle article was brought to our attention. We are currently reviewing our vendors for our weekly executive breakfast meetings and are interested in sampling your pastries. Please let me know if you would be available to provide a tasting for our procurement team." My hands were shaking so hard I could barely type a reply. "Rebecca!" I yelled. "Clear my schedule for Thursday." The tasting was the most high-stakes moment of my life. I was in a sterile gray boardroom on the 30th floor of the Terracore Tower, looking at 5 executives in identical suits. I presented my pastries, my hands steady this time. I explained my baking philosophy: local ingredients, no shortcuts, unique flavor pairings. They were polite but unreadable. They tasted the lavender shortbread, the rosemary scones. They asked pointed questions about my supply chain, my capacity, my pricing. I walked out of the building feeling numb. I had no idea how it had gone. The call came 24 hours later. "Ms. Clara, this is David from Terracore Procurement." The team was, frankly, blown away. "The VP of Operations said your lavender shortbread was a revelation. We'd like to move forward. We want Harborview Bistro as the exclusive caterer for all our executive meetings. The contract is yours." I hung up the phone and just stood there staring at Rebecca. "We got it," I whispered. "Got what?" TerraCore. We got the TerraCore contract. Rebecca's face split into a grin. She let out a whoop that made the customers at the counter jump. You did it! We celebrated, dancing around the kitchen, high on adrenaline and the smell of sweet victory. This was it. This was the moment. This contract didn't just mean revenue, it meant stability, it meant security. It meant I had won. This was the proof. This was the undeniable, metrics-driven success that even my family couldn't ignore. The TerraCore contract changed everything. We were no longer just scraping by. We were thriving. The consistent, guaranteed weekly revenue allowed me to give Rebecca a raise and promote her to assistant manager. I hired another full-time baker. We were a well-oiled machine, energized and secure. For the first time in my life, I felt safe. I felt successful. I was so proud. I took a picture of the Harborview Bistro van, newly lettered, parked outside the gleaming TerraCore tower during our first delivery. I posted it on my personal Instagram, a small, quiet celebration. The first comment was from Ethan. TerraCore? Impressive. I know their VP of procurement, Greg. Small world. A cold prickle went down my spine. I hadn't known he had a contact there. I tried to brush it off. Maybe he'd be happy for me? A week later, I was checking the morning's orders when an email landed in my inbox. The subject line was chilling. Subject contract termination, TerraCore M's. Clara. Regrettably, we must inform you that due to an internal restructuring of our vendor policies, our catering contract with Harborview Bistro is terminated, effective immediately. We will not require your services for this week's meeting. We appreciate the services rendered. It was signed by the same procurement officer who had been so enthusiastic. My breath left my lungs. No, I whispered. No, no, no. I grabbed my phone and dialed his number. He picked up on the fourth ring. David, hi, it's Clara from Harborview Bistro. I just got your email. I don't understand. What happened? Last week's delivery was perfect. The feedback was amazing. I'm sorry, Clara, he said, his voice cold and formal. All the warmth from our previous calls was gone. It's an internal decision. But what decision? What restructuring? Did I do something wrong? It's a new policy. We're standardizing our suppliers. It's out of my hands. I have to go. The line clicked dead. I stared at the phone. Internal restructuring, standardizing suppliers. It sounded like corporate jargon for something else. Rebecca, I said, my voice shaking. The TerraCore contract, it's gone. They just terminated it. What? Her face went pale. They can't. It's a contract. Effective immediately, I said, feeling numb. He said internal restructuring. Rebecca's eyes narrowed. That's not right. That's not how this works. She sat down at my laptop. You said Ethan knew the VP, right? What was his name? Greg. Why? Rebecca's fingers flew across the keyboard. She was on LinkedIn, then a few corporate news sites. Greg, okay, here he is. VP of procurement at TerraCore, and oh my God. What? His previous job. He was at the same investment firm as Ethan. They worked together for 3 years. They're just old colleagues, I said, my stomach churning. Clara, Rebecca said, her voice quiet. This new standardized supplier they're using. I'm looking up TerraCore's press releases on their new vendor partnerships. Guess who just got the contract for all their Providence catering? She turned the laptop screen toward me. The logo was bright, cheerful, and utterly soulless. It was Bean Central, the exact national chain Ethan had sent me the franchise brochure for. The betrayal was so swift, so total, it knocked the air from my lungs. This wasn't a coincidence. This wasn't bad luck. Ethan had seen my success. He had seen my one undeniable victory. And he had picked up the phone and actively, deliberately sabotaged it. He had taken my security, my proof, and given it to a faceless corporation, all to prove his point, all to make me fail. I was reeling. The loss of the TerraCore contract was a devastating financial and emotional blow. We had hired staff, increased our inventory, all based on that projected income. Now we were over-leveraged and bleeding money. I wanted to crawl into bed and disappear, but I couldn't. The community tasting day we had planned for the weekend was our only chance. We had to make it a success. We had to find new customers, generate new buzz, and claw back what Ethan had stolen. We double the samples, I told Rebecca, my voice tight. We push the Blooms and Bakes special. We give everyone who comes a 10% off coupon for next week. We have to fight. Saturday arrived, bright and clear. We set up tables on the sidewalk. The mood was festive. Our local partners, the florist and the bookstore owner, were there. Veronica Walsh, the Chronicle reporter, had even shown up, notepad in hand, to cover the local event. We were busy. I was starting to feel a small flicker of hope, and then I saw them. The silver SUV, my family, Robert, Laura, Ethan, and Sophie rolling up like a storm cloud. "Clara," Laura said, kissing the air near my cheek. "We saw the little flyer." What a turnout. So quaint. They moved through the event like health inspectors, their critical eyes missing nothing. I tried to ignore them, focusing on the real customers, on Veronica, but they were loud. "This croissant," Robert announced to a customer who was happily munching on one, "the lamination could be more consistent. See, Clara always rushes the folding process." The customer's smile faltered, and she put the rest of the croissant down. "These tables are just so close together, don't you think?" Laura said to the bookstore owner. "It feels rather cramped. It's a fire hazard, probably." Sophie was at the main sample display, physically rearranging my pastries. "These would look so much better grouped by color, not flavor," she told Rebecca, who looked like she was about to throw a tray of scones at her. "The branding here it's a little amateur, isn't it?" I finished my interview with Veronica. My jaw clenched so tight it ached. "Thank you for coming, Veronica. It means a lot to have the Chronicle's support." "Of course," she said. "This is a great story, a real community hub." "Ah, Veronica." I turned. Ethan had cornered her, one hand casually propped on the counter as if he owned the place. Robert was at his side, nodding sagely. "As I was telling my sister when she was developing the business model," Ethan was saying, his voice smooth and confident, "artisanal quality at scale requires systematic efficiency. I helped implement some of those systems, optimizing her kitchen, really." The journalist nodded, scribbling notes. "And the funding?" she asked. "It's always the hardest part for a small business." "The initial investment was substantial," Robert said, stepping in. "Sometimes these creative types need a little financial backing from family to get started. We were happy to provide the seed money to get her hobby off the ground." The lie hung in the air, thick and suffocating. My $92,000, my 4 years of double shifts, my sleepless nights, my sweat. For a brief, hot second, the old Clara surfaced, the one who would shrink, who would apologize, who would let the lie stand just to keep the peace. Then I looked around, at what I'd built, at the crowd of happy customers, at Rebecca, who was watching me with a look of pure fury on my behalf, at Veronica, her pen poised. I stepped forward right between Ethan and the reporter. "Veronica," I said, my voice perfectly calm, perfectly clear. "I'm so glad my family could be here to support me." I turned to them. Robert, Laura, Ethan, Sophie, all of them frozen, their fake smiles plastered on. "Thank you all for coming," I said, my voice projecting to the entire counter area. "It means so much that you could finally come and see the business I built, completely from scratch." I turned back to Veronica, who was now staring at me, her eyes wide. "Every single brick you see," I said, patting the wall, "every bag of flour, every license, I paid for it myself, with my own $92,000 in savings. I didn't take a single dime from anyone." The silence was electric. Robert's face went crimson. Ethan's charming mask shattered, his eyes turning to cold slits. Laura suddenly found her designer handbag fascinating. Veronica's pen was flying. "Completely from scratch?" she repeated. "Completely," I confirmed. "Now, you were asking about our expansion plans for the holiday season?" I gently steered the reporter away, leaving my family standing there, humiliated and exposed in the middle of the bistro I had built, not with their money, but in spite of their scorn. The community day was a moderate success, but it wasn't enough. It brought in a weekend of good sales, but it couldn't replace the gaping financial crater the TerraCore contract had left. I spent the next week in a state of quiet panic. I was looking at the spreadsheets and the numbers were bad. We were officially in the red. The new hires, the extra inventory. I was on a path to burn through my savings and default on my loans in less than 3 months. Ethan's sabotage had been a kill shot. I was sitting in my tiny office above the bistro, my head in my hands, when the email chimed. Subject: Urgent exclusive vendor inquiry, Apex Hotel Group. My head snapped up. I didn't recognize the name. I opened it. Ms. Clara. We represent the Apex Hotel Group, a regional conglomerate of 12 boutique hotels. We are in the process of a rapid rebrand and are seeking an exclusive pastry supplier for all our locations, effective next month. Your bistro, Harborview, has come highly recommended for its quality and unique artisanal profile. This is a fast-moving project. We require a full proposal, including sample menus, pricing tiers for bulk orders, and a detailed plan for scaling your delivery logistics within 48 hours. This is a 7-figure contract. We look forward to seeing what you can do. It was signed by a Martin Donovan, Director of Procurement. I read it 3 times. A 7-figure contract, 12 hotels. It wasn't just a lifeline, it was a miracle. It was the answer to everything. It would not only save the bistro, it would launch it into a new league. "Rebecca!" I shouted. She ran upstairs. "What is it? What's wrong?" I pointed at the screen. She read it, her eyes getting wider with every line. "Clara, this is it. It's a 48-hour deadline," I said, my mind already racing. "It's impossible." "No, it's not," she said, her voice firm. "We can do this. I'll handle the logistics plan and the pricing tiers. You develop 3 different sample menus. We'll work all night. We will get this." For the next 48 hours, we didn't sleep. We drank pot after pot of coffee. The bistro downstairs suffered. We were late opening, we ran out of popular items, and I snapped at a regular who complained. We were burning out, running on pure, desperate adrenaline. We baked samples, photographed them, wrote glowing descriptions. Rebecca built financial models and delivery route spreadsheets that made my head spin. My tiny office was a war room, covered in flour, coffee cups, and printouts. With 30 minutes to spare, we hit send on the massive 80-page proposal. It was the best work I'd ever done. I was so exhausted I could barely see straight. "We did it," Rebecca whispered, slumping in her chair. "We did it," I echoed. We went downstairs and fell asleep, our heads on the cafe tables. I woke up the next morning feeling hungover, my neck stiff. I'd forgotten to set my alarm. I stumbled upstairs to my laptop to check my email, my heart pounding with anticipation. There was one new message. From Mailer Demon. Subject: Delivery Status Notification. Failure. Address not found. Your message wasn't delivered to M. Donovan, apexhotelgroup.net, because the address couldn't be found or is unable to receive mail. My blood ran cold. What? I tried the email address again. I checked the spelling. It was correct. Delivery Status Notification. Failure. I frantically Googled Apex Hotel Group. Nothing. No website, no press releases, no Martin Donovan. My hands were shaking. I called the main phone number listed in the email's signature. "We're sorry, the number you have dialed is not in service. Please check the number and try again." It was fake, all of it. The company, the contract, the 48 hours of work, the sleepless nights, the money we'd spent on ingredients for samples. All of it was a lie. A sick, Cold realization washed over me. Who would do this? Who knew I was desperate? Who had the marketing savvy to make it look so real? I grabbed my phone and opened Instagram. I went to Sophie's profile. I scrolled through her stories from the last 2 days. There it was, a picture of her, sipping a mimosa at a spa. The caption, "Finally relaxing after pulling an all-nighter on a massive project proposal for a client. Sometimes you just have to create the opportunity you want." See marketing pranks. See hustle. She knew. She had to know. She had watched Ethan sabotage my biggest contract, and when I was down, she had delivered the second blow. A sophisticated, cruel trap designed to make me waste my last reserves of time, money, and hope. I was at my absolute lowest, beaten down, exhausted, and staring at a stack of unpaid invoices. The false lead hadn't just cost me time, it had cost me real money. We'd neglected the bistro for 2 days, and our regulars had noticed. I was sitting in the dark, in the quiet of the closed bistro, when my phone lit up. A text from Robert. "Family dinner, tonight. We need to discuss the cafe's future." This time, there was no pretense of a celebration. It was a summons. I drove to their house in a daze. I had nothing left to fight with. They had won. I walked in. They were all there, waiting for me in the living room, not in the study. This was a full-scale ambush. "Clara, honey, you look exhausted," Laura said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "So we heard about that big hotel deal falling through," Sophie said, examining her nails. "Such a shame. You must have put so much work into that proposal." The mask was off. Her eyes were gleaming with triumph. "And that TerraCore contract," Ethan chimed in, swirling his whiskey. "Terrible luck, that. These big corporations, so fickle." Robert stood up, taking his position by the fireplace, the patriarch ready to deliver his verdict. "Clara, this hobby is over," he said, his voice laced with grim finality. "You're bleeding money. You're exhausted. You're in over your head." "We're stepping in," Ethan said, his voice eager. "We have a comprehensive plan." "We're going to save you, honey," Laura said. Robert nodded. "We're officially investing. We'll absorb your debt. But as majority partners, we will be making the decisions." "I've already outlined the 5-year growth strategy," Ethan said, pulling a leather-bound portfolio from his briefcase. "We're franchising. Harbor View Bistro Express. We'll have 10 locations in the state by this time next year." "And I'll be handling the rebrand," Sophie said, pulling up a file on her tablet. "Your current aesthetic is charming, but it's not scalable. We need a clean corporate logo, something reproducible. I've already had a designer mock some up." They were like vultures, picking apart the carcass of my dream. "You'll stick to the baking, of course," Ethan added. "Your creative side. We'll handle the actual business." "Think about it, sweetie," Laura said, placing her hand on my arm. "A real family business. All of us working together. You've been so independent lately. It feels like you're pulling away." "Success shouldn't come at the cost of family unity, Clara," Robert said, his voice hardening. "Going solo when you could have family backing seems ungrateful, selfish." The emotional blackmail was thick, suffocating. "Refuse our help and you are no longer one of us." I sat there, absorbing the coordinated attack. They had planned this, Ethan's sabotage, Sophie's fake proposal, and now the rescue. They hadn't just waited for me to fail, they had manufactured my failure. For a moment, I considered it, just giving in. The exhaustion was so deep, the fight was so hard. Maybe it would be easier to just let them take it. But then I thought of Rebecca, of my regulars, of the pride I'd felt when I saw my logo on the TerraCore delivery van, the memory of signing the lease. The old approval-seeking Clara was gone. She had died somewhere in that 48-hour caffeine-fueled haze. I let the silence stretch. I watched them, their expectant, hungry faces, and then I spoke. "No, It was quiet, but the word landed in the center of the room like a stone. "What did you say?" Robert asked, his brow furrowing. I said no. I sat up straighter. "Thank you for the offer, but I'm declining." "Clara, be reasonable," Robert snapped. "You're failing. We're your only option." "Am I?" I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder. I tossed it onto the coffee table. "You mean the TerraCore contract?" I looked directly at Ethan. His smile wavered. "You really should have done your homework, Ethan. The chain you pushed them to? Bean Central? Turns out they also supply TerraCore's biggest competitor, a massive conflict of interest. It took their legal department about 5 days to figure it out." Ethan's face went white. "The competitor's CEO, he was furious," I continued, my voice smooth. "He was so furious, in fact, that his procurement team called me the next day. They were very impressed that I had been poached and then unfairly dropped. They saw an opportunity." I slid the first contract across the table. "This is my new, more lucrative, exclusive contract with them. They're larger than TerraCore, and this one has an ironclad penalty clause." Sophie scoffed. "A lucky break. That doesn't solve your supply problem. I heard your main supplier is cutting small accounts." "You're right." I cut her off. I pulled out a second folder. "Your false lead was inconvenient, Sophie. Wasting my time was cruel, but it did make me realize my supplier was unreliable. So I used my new contract and the press from the Chronicle article as leverage." I slid the second contract over. "I signed an exclusive deal with Beacon Roasting Co. You know, the one that won the National Barista Championship last year? They're giving me a discount just to be their flagship cafe in Providence." The color drained from Sophie's face. "And finally," I said, reaching back into my bag, "I was looking for a new, bigger supplier anyway, because my quarterly profits, even without TerraCore, are up 32%. I didn't pull out a folder. I pulled out a set of keys and dropped them on the table. They landed with a heavy, final clink. "I needed a bigger supplier," I said, "for my second location. I signed the lease yesterday. It's downtown near the art museum." I stood up. The room was utterly, completely silent. For the first time in my entire life, I had rendered my family speechless. Their ambush was in ruins. Their rescue was a joke. Their entire coordinated plan had been dismantled, not by luck, but by my own competence. "My hobby," I said, walking to the door, "is now a 2-location LLC with an exclusive premium supply chain. So thank you for the offer, but I'll be handling my own expansion." I left them there, frozen in their shock, their useless proposals, and their smug, superior smiles, all melting in the face of my success. 1 year later, Harborview Bistro was unrecognizable. It was packed, not with family, but with my community. Twinkling lights were strung from the ceiling. A jazz trio played in the corner. We had hired caterers, and the irony was delicious. "A toast," Rebecca, now my general manager, raised her champagne flute. "To Clara, the woman who never, ever gave up on her dream, even when everyone told her she should." The room erupted in applause. I looked around, my heart full. My team, my loyal customers, the local business owners who had become my real family. The mayor of Providence, Mayor Thompson, was shaking my hand. "Clara, I'm not kidding. You've revitalized this entire block. We're giving you the Providence Entrepreneur of the Year award at the next city gala." Veronica Walsh was there, covering the party for a Fork and Vine magazine feature. "From a small startup to a Providence institution in 1 year," she said, smiling. "It's the story everyone wants to read." And in the corner, almost an afterthought, was my family. They were just guests. They weren't the center of my world. They weren't the validators. Their presence was welcome, but no longer necessary. Robert was talking to the mayor, a stiff, proud smile on his face. "My daughter," I heard him say, "always knew she had the right stuff." I had to suppress a laugh. Sophie approached me, hesitant, her old confidence gone. "Clara, your branding. It's just amazing. The new location looks incredible. I was wondering, would you have time to look at a client's marketing portfolio for me? Just give me some tips." "Send me an email, Sophie," I said, turning to greet another guest. "I'll see if I have time." Later, as the party wound down, Ethan approached me. He was alone, his hands shoved deep in his pockets, his expensive suit looking rumpled. "Clara," he said, avoiding my eyes, "it's impressive. What you've done. Really." "Thanks, Ethan. Listen." He took a deep breath. I'm striking out on my own, leaving the firm, starting my own consulting firm." "Oh?" I said, taking a sip of champagne. "Yeah, and I was wondering." He finally looked at me, his expression one I'd never seen before. He was asking for a favor. "I was wondering if you had time to look at my business plan, just the numbers. Give me your thoughts." The irony was so thick I could barely breathe. Ethan. Mr. Wake Forest, Mr. Excellence in Financial Innovation, asking me, the community college cupcake baker, for business advice. I looked at him, at the man who had tried to destroy me, and I felt nothing. Not anger, not even triumph, just distance. "I'll think about it, Ethan," I said, giving him a small, polite smile. "Send me an email." I turned away, back to my party, back to the life I had built, not in their shadow, but in my own bright, brilliant light. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here,